right, y'all, welcome to another paid review. This time we are reviewing Dream Match Revolution. Now, usually, sometimes I go through the entire chapter, but this time the author requested that I don't show the entire chapter in this review. The link to his Kickstarter for this comic or manga will be in the description box. Y'all can go ahead and support him there. So I'm going to call it a manga. This manga is a wrestling manga, and the story is basically about this girl, Faith Stone, pretty cool name. She dreams to wrestle her idol in this wrestling company called Diamond Heights. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple to follow, and I would say it's one of those. I would consider it a snack manga, and I think the author understands what type of product that they created here. They are not trying to create something serious. They are trying to create something that people can snack on and even come back to for a snack. So it does have some replay value. It does have some reading value if you want something rather simple and straightforward with cool art and bubbly characters. This is something that you can come back to. Now, I was disappointed that the chapter's page number is rather low. I wanted a bit more, because I will say that when it gets to the fight scene where, spoiler alert, I guess, where the character gets fed up for throwing the fights. She gets fed up that, hey, why do I have to keep on losing my fights? I want a real fight. I want to show off what I can really do, because my dream is to fight my number one idol. It's why I joined this company. I was inspired by my favorite wrestler and so on. So I want to fight her. So she gets to meet her favorite wrestler, and she tells her that, look, you got to fight for what you want. If you want to fight me, then you're going to have to literally fight for it. It doesn't matter what the company says. Do what you came here to do. Go through the obstacles, win the fights so you can get to me. And I found that rather cool, right? I found that rather cool. So when it got to the part where she is now determined to win the fight, it was insanely short and rather unbelievable, rather unrealistic, because the true potential of her fighting abilities are not clearly shown in this chapter at all. We don't actually know how many years she's been training. We have zero backstory of her upbringing, how many hours she spent in the gym to achieve her strength, and so on. We have no idea the sacrifices she made in order to win the fight that she won, because her opponent seemed rather intimidating, and her opponent is this one that you see right here, actually. So it seemed out of nowhere that suddenly you can just do that, but we didn't care. The problem is I couldn't care, and I couldn't believe it. She doesn't look like a wimp. She doesn't look like a sissy, but the problem is there should have been more of a back and forth. Now, as you know, here on Coffee Comics, we judge by the MANAA standards and the MANAA ingredients. But today, we're going to be looking at this example over here that I haven't pulled up ever since I created the whole MANAA thing in general. So first, let's go to the ingredients, though. So in terms of the ingredients, it's got 2 out of 4. It's familiar to me. When I look at this, it reminds me of some old school Nickelodeon cartoons such as Totally Spies, thanks to the art style the female characters are drawn in. Is it relatable? I don't think so for the general public. For the general public, I don't think it's relatable thus far, because we don't know the main character struggles at all. And what she desires is just to fight her idol. I mean, the general public doesn't really have such aspirations, you know. Is it hopeful? It definitely has undertones of something, a story that is rather hopeful, you know, definitely. So I would say, yeah. Is it inspiring? Well, not yet. We'd have to see her overcome more challenges and experience more hardship and get back up and keep going until she gets her goal. So 2 out of 4 in the ingredients, and I had said that 4 out of 4 great product, 3 out of 4 good product, 2 out of 4 still pretty good, 1 out of 4 got potential. So it's got 2 out of 4. Also, sometimes we tend to look at passable over here, how to achieve it. I will say the author definitely used a lot of passable techniques here. And remember, passable is the simplification of professional standards, not the sacrifice of professional standards. He's definitely got the contrast on lock. He's got the composition on lock sometimes. Facial expressions are clear, but I would not say they are very vivid or extremely convincing. I will say they get the message across, but there's just they don't feel alive. I should say that, you know. It just doesn't hit home enough, the facial expressions. So, but that's just me. In terms of panel flow, I have a problem with the panel flow. Now it flows fine, but the problem is everything feels completely boxed in. Like everything, most of the things are condemned within the panels. It's only in this one instance here where there's a bit of overlap that we see the main character's hairs overlapping with the upper panel over there. I wish there was more of this, especially when we're introduced to her idol. The introduction was so stale. I didn't even know that this is her idol. This is the character that she's been wanting to fight. It was very underwhelming and so very disappointing. I was expecting a splash page, right? So the panel flow is rather disappointing because important moments don't feel important. They don't, right? When important statements are mentioned, they don't feel or look important at all, right? So we're gonna go through the first 4 pages here. So this is page 1 and 2. So it starts off with an establishing shot inside the wrestling match, inside the wrestling ring or facility. I have a bit of a problem with that. Now, usually I like to start establishing shots based on where is this wrestling match taking place? What city? Is it in the real world, alien world? Give us a proper establishing shot of it's in the city, right? Which city? What landmark is there to indicate that, oh, this is in Chicago. Oh, this is in Washington. Oh, this is in China. Give us a landmark for us to immerse ourselves in, to understand that, okay, we are in this country, or okay, we are in an alien planet with sci-fi elements. We're not given that here at all. We're just immediately thrown in the ring. Sometimes you can break such rules where you just get into the nitty-gritty of the action, but in this case, it doesn't really work because throughout the chapter, we are still confined within Diamond Heights Stadium, right? It's one big, massive dome, and I'm assuming that it is. I'm thinking of the WWE dome, and how everything takes place indoors, right? So it feels rather claustrophobic. So it starts off with establishing shot of the ring, and we see the character getting pinned down, and she says, "This sucks. Why do I have to keep losing?" Then we see these 2 random characters here, and I know who this is you know who you are. All right, let's face it. Chris, you put yourself up in here, bro. And that's okay for those who don't know. But since I know, I'm like, man, what you doing in here? What significance are you playing here, Chris? Ain't no significance you playing up in here, right? Because when you see characters like this, perhaps he's gonna play a role later on. And this is just chapter 1. But that's why I said chapter 1 feels so short, right? Extremely short. So we see Chris and this guy, and he says, and the rookie suffers another defeat. Are they the commentators? I don't know, because the speech bubble is not written like they are commentating. I don't see a microphone, so I don't know who they are, but they seem to be of some importance, but we don't know why. Jaded Tiger when's the last time you've seen an outstanding losing streak? Fate Stone, newbie of Diamond High's Pro Wrestling. And then they start fighting in the background. Pay attention, JT. That was just now. And we see her walking away in shame. And we see a fan saying, hey, your time is coming, I'm sure of it. And she says, I hope so. I can't keep this up anymore, Blue. I guess it's a friend. And then we get to this part here where she's going to be arguing with the general manager about, hey, I'm sick of just throwing the fights. The general manager was upset that she didn't throw the fight convincingly. It looked like she just gave up, and that's bad for the ratings and so on. But she pretty much, you know, stands her ground, and she's told that, hey, you're gonna have to fight Gail, right, and give her a win. And she says, well, that's not fair. And as she's about to spit her mind some more, we are then introduced to her idol. See what I mean? This is her beloved idol. This is the woman that she has always wanted to wrestle. But look at the introduction. Very underwhelming, very disappointing. There was supposed to be all kinds of splash page action, right? All kinds. And I would say this is the first time that we see a medium shot of the characters, because since page 1, right, it's been mostly close-up shots. It's mostly been close-up, close-up, close-up. I would consider this somewhat of a close-up as well. This is an extreme close-up, medium close-up, I suppose, right? Close-up, 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 being bombarded by close-ups, close-up, close-up. Not really so much there, but the sense of scale is lost in this entire chapter. There isn't enough scale because there aren't any long shots. The only long shots we get is the establishing shot here, but throughout the entirety of the chapter, it's mostly medium close-up, medium close-up, medium close-up. And this creates a repetitiveness for my eyes to enjoy what I'm visually consuming. And this is why I brought up the MANAA dish, right? The MANAA dishes. Now, I had said that MANAA using passable, see the notes over here, using passable as well, you need to consider how you dish up everything. Oh, darn. You need to consider how you dish up everything. So I would say with this manga, we have the problem that it looks like dish 1, just without the beef. So picture this dish. It's limited in how much elements, how much food is on the dish. It's not a gourmet, right? He used passable, but the problem is he took away the beef and the sauce, and he just duplicated the cauliflower and the maca powder 3 times over. So there's nothing else to chew on. It's just cauliflower and maca powder, and that's all on the dish. You got to be able to give people something to chew on visually. You got to be playing with the camera angles long shot, medium shot, and so on. Especially when there's interpersonal dialogue, you don't need so many close-up shots. There's too many. There's times where at least the author tries to show other things aside from them talking all the time. But I can't help but notice how striking the close-ups are most of the time. And even when there is a display of something else other than the characters, such as this panel, it's too close. It's way too close, right? When we go to this page here, and this will be the last that I can show basically, notice that this almost shows her full figure. Now, I ain't saying that because they're female, you gotta show all that hot sauce, you gotta show the booty and all that. I'm not saying you should do that, but it definitely would help. Not the booty, but visually and camera angles, you need some long shots. You see, in this, what I would have done in this panel here, I definitely would have made a long shot, made it smaller, and I would have drawn her looking back. So she would like be turning her head, and this panel here would have, in fact, I wouldn't even put a panel over here. I would just draw Luna taking the space entirely. You see, it's important that when you give introductions to new characters, you show the level of importance that they can play. I want to give an example, but let me give an example first with the interpersonal exchanges. Now, of course, it depends on what the characters are talking about. It depends on how serious the conversation is and so on. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. You need to be able to give variety visually with the camera angles. An example I'll give is from my MANAA here. So here, one of the characters was just told something devastating. This is from chapter 18. And he reacts saying, "You better not be lying." And notice the camera angle here that I pretty much drew him from afar and then just showing Stefan's boots over here. And you can say, oh, well, that's not that amazing. It doesn't have to be amazing. It just has to give variety. And it has to be clear. You need to be able to see what's happening. You see? So that's all there is to it. You just got to give variety. I don't bombard the reader with a lot of close-ups and close-ups and close-ups. Okay? And another thing I noticed is that in this moment, there's a page after this that I can't show. But there's a page where Luna asks the main character, "What do you want?" And she says, "Well, my dream has always been to wrestle you." See, I would have preferred upon that statement being made that the author would have drawn that moment where she finally gets to fight her idol. Show us, don't tell us, basically. And I'm gonna give an example of that as well, again, is that in this moment where Alex discovers his father is dead, I show what Alex is telling or what he's imagining, right? When he says my father is a captain of the 5th Raid Legion, I actually draw the whole thing, showing the father actually leading the so-called Raid Legion and whatnot, just to give it some more cinematic feel, showing, less telling. So you can say this isn't an important moment. No, but it does make it important. It does make it more visually satisfying for the reader. Instead of just reading what Alex would be saying, imagine this whole thing, this whole part is cut off and it's just him crying like this with dialogue saying, my father was this, my father was that. You're not showing us what your father was, you're telling us what your father was. And that's my problem here, is that we're told what Luna wanted to do. We're told about what she imagines, but we're not seeing the imagination. There's too many times where we're not seeing it. So that's another problem. So it's a lack of establishing shots, showing us where are we? Are we in the natural world, the human world, or what? There's the problem of the too many close-ups and medium shots. There is the problem of showing and not telling, and the problem of Luna has not shown enough struggle for us to care. But then now there's the fifth problem. My fifth problem is the way the author lined up or set up the panels, right? So let me show you an example again, using my own, right? So you see the amount of space in between here. This is important. The gutters and so on, the cutoff area and so on. Now, what the author has done is that he's pushed a lot of the panels to this part in the middle where it would be cut off, where in actuality what you're supposed to do is, depending on the left or right, you're supposed to push a lot of things to the left, like this area here. See how this panel stretches all the way to the left, and so on, including this one. But what was done here is that instead of this panel where the main character is in being pushed to the left, it's pushed to the right. This part here where Luna is, it'll be cut off. But when you open this manga, when it's printed, you're going to want to spread it a bit more open, right? You're going to want to extend it a bit more because you're now squinting. You're wondering if you're losing detail. That's the issue. So what I did was, I don't want people to feel like they're losing detail. So I want to make sure that I want to keep a huge space open right here, right? Now it's different if it's a double spread, it's different. Same thing here again. You see, notice the spacing in between. Notice the spacing in between, right? So I remember reading some manga that had this exact problem where I was scanning and analyzing and looking at all the details, and I hated how I had to spread the thing open as if I'm gonna rip it apart because everything is pushed way too far to the center. It shouldn't be that way. You lose detail, right? So that's my fifth problem with this manga. So ultimately though, I would say it's a neat product. As I said, it's definitely something you can keep reading. It's not a disposable piece of media. I think the author created this so it can have that replay value, that reread value, but just gotta give us more to chew on, using the MANAA dishes as an example. You gotta give us some meat, bro, because what you got right here is dish number one without the meat. Dish number one without the meat. We need the meat. You gotta diversify the camera angles. Usually when a character is shouting, right, I tend to, or they have a lot to say, I tend to use a long shot, right? And I studied the camera angles mostly from Naruto's manga. Like, I always looked at, why did Kishimoto set up this panel this way? I look at the speech bubble in there and the size of the dialogue, and I'm like, oh. I look at the camera angle and whether the dialogue is short or not, and I'm like, oh, because the character is saying something important. That's why this angle is the way it is. In this situation, we don't really get that. Too many close-ups, too many medium shots. We need some long shots. We need characters overlapping way more. See, Luna here is overlapping. See her hair, it's overlapping, but it just doesn't work. It actually just feels claustrophobic. It doesn't work in this one. In this particular page, it doesn't work. When you introduce new characters, flip and put them, have a splash page. Do I have an example of that? Let me quickly find an example. I remember doing that in chapter 2. Here we are. This as an example. You see, now this character is fairly important in Bloody Hell, but not that important. But ultimately, her reintroduction, because the first time she was shown in the story, it didn't matter. So I didn't put her in an introduction shot like this. But because she reappears again, it does matter. So I made a artistic decision to make it feel like she matters. You see what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean by panel flow. You need to be able to convince the reader what is important and what isn't by visually showing us. A character who takes up more space means they are important, right? They have some significance, even if it's just for the chapter, not the story as a whole, but for the chapter. You see? So I would say the author is going to have to work on that for chapter 2. I will say that after the fight was won, the self-insert again of this character, of yourself, Chris, it was weird because he says something as if it's a joke that we're supposed to catch. Now, definitely a normal person that doesn't know that, oh, this is Chris the author, would be like, huh? Who is this? And why? Is that supposed to mean anything? Is there a joke I'm missing here? You see? So, people should not add characters for the sake of it. You gotta add them characters because they actually have some value and importance. Now, in this page, what I would have done is I would have made Luna actually, the main character of Faith, take up this entire space right here. Like, make her walk of shame and disappointment more impactful. See, more impactful, because this, it doesn't feel impactful. The emotional frustration on her face isn't devastating enough, isn't frustrated enough to convince us that she deeply hates throwing the fight. You know how Attack on Titan throws lines and so on, like on the forehead to express serious emotion? You know how in some manga where they use blacks to express serious emotion? Here's an example here. I use blacks there. I use blacks here to express serious emotion. That's a very easy thing to add, right? So it can be easily added in there, or just be considered for the next chapter and so on. But ultimately, it's a good product. So I'm gonna give the rating. Under the Coffee Comic standard, because the panel flow is, everything feels boxed in, the establishing shots it's rather claustrophobic and so on. Under the Coffee Comic standard, I'm gonna give it a 6. Under the general standard for Western indie manga that you find on the internet, I would say 7.5. But all these things are really easy to fix, so it's not a big deal. And that's it. If you would like a paid review, it's $40 per chapter. A chapter consists of 15 pages to 25 pages. That's it. If you want more caffeine, if you miss the caffeine, you can only find it on Patreon, right? You can only find that good caffeine on Patreon. Calling out the hunchbacks and the zombies and whatnot, that's only on Patreon. That never went away. It's only on Patreon, right? And a few other goodie bags up in there. But anyway, that's it for now.